Hi, I'm Alina. At the last family gathering, my parents raised their glasses and laughed. You're too poor to even own a car. They didn't know I'd parked a prototype of my own brand outside. They didn't know the car they gifted me later was something I'd already built, funded, designed. For years, they erased my name, called me invisible, and mocked every dream I had. But the night I handed them my business card, founder, CEO, Aura Motors, the room went silent. Before we begin, where are you listening from right now? And have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Because this is the story of how I turned their laughter into a legacy. The Arizona sun was merciless, even at this hour. Light bounced off the marble patio like it had something to prove. As I stepped through the wrought iron gates into the garden, my heels clicked against the sandstone tile, and I instantly regretted showing up early. A hostess glanced at the seating chart, then offered a tight-lipped smile. "You're on table 11 right by the fountain," she said. She meant the outdoor restroom. I nodded, pretending not to notice the way her eyes flicked downward, sizing up, my thrifted heels like they'd walked in from the wrong decade. I made my way past tables dressed in linen and smugness, where cousins sipped cocktails and laughed just a little too loudly. At table 11, the scent of roses struggled to mask the chemical tang from the restroom just behind the hedge. I sat down, folded my hands in my lap. I hadn't even unwrapped my napkin before my father raised his glass from across the lawn. "At least you're not late today," he called out, his voice warm with cruelty. "Guess your broken-down car finally pulled through." Laughter scattered across the tables like coins tossed into a fountain, shallow and cold. I didn't look up. I just reached for my iced tea, the condensation already bleeding into the cuff of my sleeve. "She's still working those temp gigs, right?" I heard someone ask. Another voice replied, "Did you ever find her on LinkedIn?" "Oh, please," came Clarissa's voice, the kind that always seemed to smile when it spoke. "Some people just settle, as long as she's happy renting forever." She leaned close enough that I could smell her Chanel, then whispered just loud enough for others to catch it. "Then again, not everyone's meant for ownership." Their mother, my mother Serafina, passed me a salad plate as she circled the table. Her tone was sweet as syrup, her smile sharp enough to cut. "Maybe next year we all pitch in and get you a used car. Wouldn't that be something?" I met her eyes for the briefest second. Then I turned away, adjusted the napkin on my lap, and took another sip of tea. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from restraint. Across from me, my niece Maya furrowed her brows. She was 9. She didn't understand. Yet why Aunt Alina sat apart. Why nobody clinked glasses in my direction. But one day, she would. I had no doubt about that. 2 years ago, I stood alone outside a showroom in Phoenix, wearing the only blazer I owned. I'd prepared a portfolio, a proposal, a pitch deck so detailed it could have run a small country. But the salesman hadn't even looked at the documents, just glanced at my last name, smirked, and said, "Your family name doesn't carry weight here. You're not affiliated." That was the day I realized bloodlines only matter if you let them define you. That was the day I stopped asking for permission. That was the day I quietly began building Aura. I snapped out of the memory as Maya turned, to look at me again, her salad untouched. I smiled at her, just a little, not too much. If I smiled too big, someone would assume I was trying too hard. Inside, I wasn't broken. I wasn't even bruised. I was calculating. They want me invisible, I thought. They want me small, forgettable, sitting beside a bathroom, sipping silence. Fine. Because behind the scenes, things were very different. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I slipped it out, glancing at the screen. Model Aura prototype approved. Final. Design locked. Ready for showcase. I let the smallest curve play across my lips. The car they joked about, the one they assumed had barely made it here. It was mine. My design, my funding, my company. They just didn't know it yet. A waiter approached and topped off my water. I thanked him softly, then folded my phone back into the clutch and tucked it away. Clarissa stood and tapped her glass with a knife, grinning like a pageant queen. To those of us, she said, voice lifting over the crowd, who actually own our lives. More laughter. A few raised glasses. I raised mine too, just a second after everyone else. Let them have their moment, I thought. They have no idea the kind of power it takes to stay quiet. But soon, they'll learn. I didn't lower my glass right away. I kept it raised just long enough for the ice to melt a little and the silence to press in. Clarissa's toast echoed behind my eyes, but I smiled anyway. Let them think they'd won. Let them clink their glasses and throw me into the shadows like they always had. It wasn't the first time Clarissa had tried to shrink me down. She'd made it her personal pastime since high school. But this time was different. This time I had something she didn't know about. Something real. Something that didn't need a spotlight to shine. Back under the white canopy tent, she had everyone's attention again. She loved that. One hand delicately curled around a rosé flute, the other gesturing as if she were presenting an award to herself. You remember when we built that lemonade stand on Crestwood Lane? She beamed. Dad said I could sell snow to an Eskimo. Chuckles rippled across the tables. The stories kept coming. Clarissa, the young entrepreneur, the teen trailblazer, the visionary child. I didn't hear my name once. Clarissa always had the spark, Aunt Celia added, touching her pearls, like they were prayer beads. Remember how she pitched that student council idea in 8th grade? What a star. Mom followed with her usual backhanded hymn. Clarissa was the brave one, she said, giving my arm a little pat. Alina, well, she was always quiet. Loved her notebooks, little corners, and journals. My grip on the linen napkin tightened. Not everyone is made for the spotlight, Mom finished. Like a soft slap she expected me to be grateful for. I stared down at my plate, barely touched. The food felt decorative. No flavor, no point. Someone passed around an old photo in a silver frame. Yearbook, maybe. High school. My cousin Julian pointed at a yellow sticky note below Clarissa's headshot. Future CEO. The frame reached me. My breath caught. My picture wasn't there. Not even shoved to the edge. Just cropped, like I'd never been in the room. That flash of heat behind my eyes wasn't sadness. It was a memory. And memory has teeth. Senior year, I'd entered our school's small business pitch contest with a full plan. Market research, cost models, growth projections. I'd spent nights building it, rewriting, tweaking. When I presented it, I saw the judges nod. I thought, just maybe, I'd done something that would finally stick to my name. Then the results came. The trophy went to Clarissa. Her version, a repackaged version of my pitch, rewarded and trimmed down into a PowerPoint. The principal told me afterward, "Great job helping your sister prepare. You're quite the admin support." That night, I wrote in my journal, "Maybe I'm the pen behind the names they'll remember." I blinked back into the present. My thumb traced the smooth edge of the silver frame. I handed it off without a word. Even when I was there, I was edited out. I stood slowly and walked past the fountain, past the white tablecloths and fake compliments. My heels clicked softer once I hit the lawn, swallowed by grass. I paused beneath a shade tree and reached for my phone. New text from Nyla. Board locked. Launch date officially set. You did it, eh? A breeze moved through the hedge. I let it cool. My face. Clarissa's voice followed me like perfume. Don't let them get under your skin, sis. She appeared by my side, smiling with just the right amount of insincerity. Not everyone's meant to shine. Some people balance the scene. I met her eyes. Those eyes that always assumed I'd flinch. I didn't. Instead, I tilted my head and asked, "Do you ever wonder what happens when the quiet one finally speaks?" Her smile thinned. She didn't answer. We stood there for a beat too long. Then I turned and kept walking. By the valet stand, a young man glanced at the key fob I handed him, did a double take, and then said, loud enough to carry, "Ms. Vance of Aura Motors?" My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply nodded. Clarissa, standing just a few feet away, turned her head slightly but didn't seem to register it. I took the keys back without correcting him. The Aura prototype glinted under the sun, all clean lines and quiet strength. I touched the door handle, but didn't open it. Not yet. But she doesn't drive it. Not yet. Instead, I watched the others fade into the house, their laughter muffled by the glass windows and the distance I'd placed between us. The keys to the Aura prototype sat cool and solid in my palm. Still, I pocketed them. Power didn't always need to make noise. Sometimes it waited, silent, intentional. That night, I couldn't sleep. The stories they told at dinner, the way they erased me with smiles and reminiscing, clung to my skin like desert dust. I lay in my hotel bed, legs tangled in the sheet, phone glowing in my hand. I scrolled through old inboxes, half to distract myself, half searching for something I couldn't name. Then I saw it. A flagged email from 5 years ago. Subject line: regarding business proposal, Vance Motors concept. I tapped it open, and just like that, I was back in the kitchen. Mom's granite island was spotless, except for the thick stack of papers I'd laid out. My first full business plan. 24 pages, professionally bound, market-proven projections. A name, Aura. I was 28. Naive, maybe, but prepared. I'd rehearsed every answer to every question. I wore a blazer. I even bought pastries. Dad skimmed the first page and didn't touch the rest. His voice, always calm, made it worse. "Alina," he said, folding his hands. "It's not that your idea isn't clever, but if this fails, and it probably will, it reflects on all of us. We've worked too hard to be seen as reckless." Mom poured more coffee into her own cup and didn't say a word. Clarissa, sitting across from me in a blouse she'd clearly picked to look media-ready, smiled like a mentor. "Why not just intern at Tesla first?" she offered. "Real CEOs don't start with Craigslist dreams." I remember blinking, not speaking, just collecting the untouched pitch packet and slipping it back into my bag. I told myself I wouldn't cry. But the minute I got to my car, Ethan was waiting. He leaned against the driver's side door, his arms folded. I'd asked him to come for moral support. He didn't hug me. "I know you wanted them to see it," he said, brushing a piece of lint from his sleeve. "But maybe they're right. You're trying to build something out of thin air. I need someone grounded, Alina, not chasing some fantasy." His goodbye was short. No drama, just over. A week later, he stopped returning texts. He'd been the last person I trusted before I started building alone. I blinked back into the present. Scottsdale's city lights spread like a net outside my hotel window. I got up, turned on the soft light over the desk, and poured a glass of water. The past stayed close that night, like smoke in the fabric of the room. The next morning, I dressed early and headed to the pre-meeting suite for the gala event. Nothing showy, just tailored black slacks, clean lines, and a quiet kind of precision I'd learned over time that true authority doesn't wear sequins. The event coordinator was going over logistics near the front of the suite. Ethan. I knew the back of his posture instantly. He turned, and he froze. His clipboard trembled slightly in his hand before he caught himself. "Alina." His voice cracked like old paint. I tilted my head. "You found something grounded. Congratulations." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Still freelancing?" he tried. I couldn't tell if it was curiosity or a dig. "Only for Fortune 100 brands," I replied without a blink. "How's managing banquets treating you?" He laughed, too loudly, and glanced around like he hoped someone else was listening. I didn't give him more. I moved past him and into the room, where vendors prepped displays and tech-wired presentation monitors. When I returned to my suite an hour later, I slipped off my heels and opened the drawer of the bedside table. Tucked inside, between a notepad and the hotel Bible, was the pitch packet I'd carried for years, edges frayed, pages dog-eared. The original. I sat on the edge of the bed, placed it in my lap, and ran my fingers along the spine. "I built it anyway," I whispered. No one believed in it, but I had. My phone buzzed. "Nyla Media, approval cleared. We can include your name in the Aura reveal if you're ready." I looked out the window again. Same lights, same view. I typed slowly, then pressed send. Not yet. Let them keep assuming. That thought trailed me like a shadow as I stepped into the courtyard later that afternoon. A dry breeze rustled the ivy trailing over the pergolas, and the family mingled between wine barrels and copper lanterns lit early for ambiance. I moved through them quietly, like I had so many times before. Polite nods, light conversation, invisible weight. It was easy to let them keep thinking I was harmless, that I was the girl who always helped in the background but never built anything, herself. The girl who showed up in a sensible dress, not a headline. They didn't realize I'd stopped seeking their permission long ago, and I wasn't about to hand them my story just yet. Julian, my cousin-in-law, stood near the wine bar, swirling, a Cabernet with theatrical flair. "So, has anyone seen that teaser for that electric vehicle?" he asked. "Fastest EV in its class. Crazy torque. 0 to 60 in like what, 3 seconds?" Someone behind me chimed in. "Yeah, I saw it. Aura Motors, right? Some new player in the market." "Exactly," Julian said, beaming like he'd discovered it himself. "That's the one." Cassandra, one of Clarissa's work friend tag-alongs, leaned over her glass. "Rumor is it's a European company, or maybe some Ivy Leaguers from New York. Either way, I doubt it'll stick. These things never do." Then Clarissa, with that smile that always curled a little too high on one side, added, "Bet it's some tech bro with a family trust fund. Nothing American-built ever lasts. They launch, they burn, they file bankruptcy within a year." Laughter trickled through the group. I smiled, too, just not for the same reason. I took a slow sip of my drink, resisting the urge to say something, let them keep guessing. It wasn't just easier, it was more satisfying. There's something oddly luxurious about listening to people speculate about a fire you built yourself while they stand in its warmth, completely unaware. I slipped away and wandered toward one of the wooden benches facing the garden. A little pair of sneakers swung beneath it. Maya, my 7-year-old niece, was sitting there with her sketchbook open, drawing with a red pencil. She looked up as I sat beside her. "Do you have a car?" she asked without preamble. I chuckled softly. "What makes you ask?" "Everyone else parked their cars on the grass," she said, pointing toward the field. "But you got dropped off." I paused, then smiled. "I do, it's just different." Her brows furrowed. "I want to make one too, not pink. I hate when people make girl cars pink. I want one that's just strong." There was something in her voice, something I recognized in myself when I was her age. The wanting, the quiet knowing. "Then that's exactly what you should build," I said. She grinned, satisfied, and went back to her drawing. Later, after the sun dipped behind the hills and the courtyard lights took over, I headed toward the refreshment tent to refill my tea. A woman I didn't recognize, a guest of someone from the extended family, I assumed, passed me and paused. "Excuse me," she said with a warm smile. I just wanted to say, whoever designed the Aura Motors launch, that campaign is art. Clean, powerful. It gave me chills. Before I could answer, Clarissa appeared at her side, her ears clearly tuned to the word. "What's that?" she asked. The woman repeated herself, clearly unaware of the tension that just surged between us. "Aura Motors. I'm in marketing. We track these kinds of campaigns." That teaser was brilliant. They haven't named the founder, but whoever's behind it knows what they're doing. Clarissa's gaze drifted toward me for just a second. Nothing sharp, just a flicker. I gave her nothing back. I lifted my glass, nodded, and walked away. Minutes later, Nyla's name popped up on my phone again. "Nyla Media. Curiosity is climbing. We're fielding calls about you. Want to leak your role softly?" I typed my reply as I stood alone near the fire pit. Me. Not yet. Let them keep guessing. Because the sun was gone, but the lanterns scattered soft light along the vineyard path. I wandered away from the crowd, following the trail toward the small overlook at the edge of the property. The banner hanging from the canopy fluttered lightly in the wind. "The Vance Family Legacy, Building Tomorrow." I stared at it, then, "Let tomorrow be built by truth," I murmured under my breath. I didn't say it to be dramatic. I said it because it was the one thing this family had never allowed. Truth. Not when it was mine. As I turned back toward the parking lot, the sound of a car door opening echoed nearby. I glanced up. Clarissa stood beside a matte black vehicle, the door half open. Her face was twisted in confusion. Hanging inside on the driver's seat was a key fob. She pulled it closer. It gleamed. Silver and clean. Aura. Her mouth opened. Closed. Then opened again. I stepped forward and called out, voice even. Careful, not everything you assume is yours. I didn't flinch. Not when her hand froze over the aura key fob. Not when she looked at me like she was trying to compute how I could possibly be connected to something sleek, powerful, and clearly out of her league. I turned and walked away before she could ask any of the questions screaming in her eyes. That night, they seated us in the estate's formal dining room. Long walnut tables ran the length of the hall beneath crystal chandeliers. Velvet curtains framed tall windows. It all looked so polished, so painfully choreographed to feel like legacy. I was placed across from Clarissa and beside my parents, just as expected. Perfect symmetry. One daughter they brag about, the other they tolerate. But tonight I didn't blend in. I didn't need to. My silence, for the first time, seemed to make them uneasy. Dinner stretched on with the kind of laughter that only exists when people pretend too hard. Then dessert arrived. Sugar glazed. Figs, almond cream, and tension so thick it could have been spooned onto a plate. Serafina stood, her napkin carefully folded on her chair. "I have a surprise," she said, clinking her glass with the back of her spoon. "For our daughter who always finds a way to arrive fashionably, creatively." Some chuckles, some heads, turning. "I know it's not easy getting around without a car," she continued. "So your father and I, along with some generous family, pulled a little something." She gestured toward the terrace where a valet slowly pulled up an old silver sedan, the kind with worn-out hubcaps and a dent above the right headlight. A relic from the early 2000s, as charming as a used toaster. "We thought it would be nice for you to have something reliable. No more ride shares, right?" Serafina beamed like she'd solved poverty. Laughter, mostly polite. A few uncomfortable glances. Julian added, "It's humble, but hey, at least it has 4 wheels." I looked at the car, then at my mother, then at my sister. I didn't say a word, I just stood up and excused myself, as if I needed air. Because I did. Outside, the night had cooled, but the sting in my chest was burning hot. I walked slowly toward the car. The valet had left the keys in the ignition. The interior smelled faintly of leather and lemon wipes. I opened the glove box, half out of habit, half out of curiosity. That's when I saw it. A leasing form, folded once. My name wasn't on it, but Aura Motors LLC was. I blinked, then read it again. The car wasn't a gift. It wasn't even theirs. It was a returned prototype, a discontinued test model, bought under my own executive fund during early design trials. They didn't even know what they were giving me. They had taken something I already owned, repackaged it as their benevolence, and offered it to me like charity. I shut the glove box and stepped away from the car. My heels clicked steadily back toward the dining room. When I reached the table, I didn't sit. I stood behind my chair, steady, measured. "It's thoughtful," I said, eyes on my mother. "I've always been fond of the craftsmanship Aura puts into their builds." Silence dropped like a curtain. Cassandra, fork frozen in midair, turned to me. "Wait, why would you know anything about that?" I smiled gently. "Some of us work in silence. That doesn't mean we're standing still." No one spoke. Even Julian didn't dare crack a joke. Clarissa stared at me, eyes narrowed, calculating. Serafina's hand went to her wine glass, missing the stem the first time. I sat down. They didn't laugh anymore. The rest of the table drifted into awkward conversation. Something about real estate. Something about avocado farming in Southern California. No one looked directly at me. Not now. Nyla's text buzzed under the table. "Nyla, they're starting to dig. Soften or strike." I glanced across the table at my father, who now looked down at his plate like it held ancient secrets. My mother dabbed, her lip too hard like she was scrubbing off something shameful. Me. Strike. Schedule the ad release. I stood up again, this time slower, steadier. They watched now. I stepped outside, away from the chandeliers and curated decor, and toward the edge fire pit glowing quietly under the Arizona stars. My phone screen lit up one last time as I typed. Then I turned back toward the house and whispered to myself, "You wanted legacy? Let's see how you handle one built without you." I didn't sleep much, but I didn't need to. The sun was just starting to warm the adobe tiles outside my suite when I heard the first notification ping. Then another, and another, like a slow, rolling drumbeat. Building, unrelenting. The ad had aired. No voiceover, no bold captions, just visuals, clean lines, cutting-edge form, female hands gripping an Aura steering wheel, and at the very end, my face turning slightly, locking eyes with the camera, silent, unapologetic. Downstairs at the breakfast table, the mood shifted the second I walked in. Forks paused mid-bite. Coffee cups hovered in place. Phones buzzed like bees trapped in linen napkins. No one looked directly at me, but I felt their glances orbiting like satellites. Uneasy, curious. Clarissa's phone screen lit up as she glanced down at her lap, her jaw clenched just slightly. Serafina stirred her tea 3 times before taking a single sip. I sat down across from them and calmly spread a napkin across my lap. The toast was dry. The silence was drier. 2 hours later, we were all ushered to the main lawn for the charity brunch, an annual Vance Foundation affair meant to showcase community upliftment and whatever cause was trendy that year. This time, it was women in leadership. The tented pavilion shimmered in the Arizona sun, all glassware and floral centerpieces and beige hats trying too hard. Clarissa, as expected, was the keynote speaker. She wore navy silk and a too white smile as she addressed the crowd. "We gathered today to honor not just success," she said, her voice smooth as polished wood, "but the shoulders we stand on, especially as women, because we know support builds success." People nodded, applauded gently. Then she turned slightly, gesturing toward me. "And I'd like to invite my sister, Alina, to the stage. A woman who reminds us that when family stands beside you, anything is possible." I stood. My heels felt heavier than usual against the platform as I walked toward her. She stepped aside, arms wide, like she just anointed me with sainthood. I took the mic from her gently, paused, looked at the crowd, then at her. "Support," I began, "is a beautiful thing." I let the words sit there. It's rare. So when you receive none, you learn how to build alone. The crowd shifted. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a matte black business card, walked it directly over to the event coordinator at the edge of the stage, handed it to her with a nod. "Founder, Aura Motors." A visible ripple spread through the guests like a stone tossed in still water. Gasps, a few murmurs. One camera phone snapped too loudly. On the big screen behind us, the live stream stuttered, froze, just as the card passed hands. Clarissa froze for a heartbeat too long, then recovered. She laughed, a little too sharply. "You always did love your little projects," she said. But Mike picked it up. Every word. I handed it back without replying. As I stepped off the stage, Cassandra leaned toward Serafina and whispered, though clearly not quietly enough, "You never said it was her." Julian muttered something under his breath. I didn't catch it all, but I caught the word damn. Serafina's face looked like porcelain left too long in the sun. Pale, cracking. I made my way back to the table. Didn't eat, didn't sit. Later that afternoon, after most of the guests had scattered and the catering staff started clearing the buffet tables, Nyla found me near the garden wall, tucked behind a row of honeysuckle. Her expression was unreadable. "We got something," she said quietly, showing me her phone. An anonymous email sent to 2 gossip outlets and 1 industry blog. It claimed I was nothing more than a paper figurehead, that the real founder was someone else. Nameless, of course. It hinted that Aura had used me for optics. I didn't need to ask where it came from. I could smell the sour wine and stale envy between every line. Clarissa never liked being upstaged. Not at family dinner, not at school, and definitely not under a white charity tent in front of half the West Valley donors. Nyla glanced up. "Want us to deny the tip?" I looked past her, out over the hills where the sky met dust and green, where I once dreamed of escaping all this, not reclaiming it. No, I said slowly. Let them push. I turned my gaze toward the estate behind me, the house I grew up in, the place that never once felt like mine. They've just given me the reason I needed. By the time I arrived at Aura's downtown HQ, the sky had shifted from rose to pewter, signaling a monsoon brewing in the Arizona distance. It was quiet inside. Too quiet, considering what we were about to uncover. Nyla was already waiting in my office, the conference table between us layered with documents. She didn't waste time. She slid a manila folder toward me. No one knows we've got this version printed, she said. But someone else is trying to rewrite the whole damn history. I opened it. There, in black and white, was an email chain, allegedly leaked, suggesting I was nothing but a placeholder. The message claimed I had no actual stake in Aura's origins, that someone else, unnamed of course, was the silent founder, that I was just optics, for show. I scanned the pages. My stomach didn't flip, my hands didn't shake. I was too tired for outrage and too prepared for this exact kind of attack. Nyla looked at me carefully. They're saying you weren't even listed on the founding paperwork, that someone let you take credit so the brand could go viral. I didn't speak. Instead, I stood, walked to the antique wall safe behind the photo of the first Aura frame sketch, and turned the dial. 3 clicks to the left, 2 right, 1 more left. It opened with a soft groan. Inside were the original plans, hand-drawn, annotated, time-stamped wireframe sketches from the nights I spent working on a borrowed drafting board in a Phoenix co-op apartment. My first prototype pitch deck, backed with a legal stamp from our TUR, lawyer. Every funding proposal, my name, my initials, my fight. I pulled out one file in particular, a signed contract from our earliest investor, stamped, notarized, with a copy of my driver's license paper-clipped. Tucked inside that same envelope was an old yellow post-it, the handwriting instantly recognizable. My mentor Ilara had written, "Your eyes see things the world isn't ready for yet. Build anyway." I stared at that note for longer than I meant to. Nyla broke the quiet. Want me to prep these for release? I placed the file down gently and shook my head. Not yet. She frowned. You sure? I nodded. Let them keep talking, but we'll move when it's time. Later that night, I sat alone with my laptop on my patio. The cicadas buzzed like static around me. I clicked play, a podcast interview. Clarissa's voice, smooth as ever, popped into my earbuds. She was talking to one of those lifestyle influencers, the kind that treated gossip like gospel and called betrayal tea. Clarissa laughed. My little sister always liked the spotlight, so I gave her a brand to play with, let her feel important, kept her busy. My jaw didn't clench. I didn't flinch. The video had already been clipped and reposted. The caption read, "Big Sis says she let her sister play CEO." The comments were brutal. Yikes. Jealous much? She gave her a toy company and now it's beating Tesla? Tell me you're bitter without telling me. Some were worse, vile in the way the internet could be. But I didn't need to scroll. I'd seen this before. Every woman who ever built something from scratch and refused to make herself smaller got the same treatment. I closed the browser. Then I opened a fresh Dropbox folder. It didn't take long to fill. Scans of contracts, emails dated back 6 years, concept art signed and time-stamped, NDA logs, product patents filed under my name, wire transfers, pitch videos, the entire formation of Aura. Documented, organized, undeniable. No captions, no statements, just evidence. Nyla watched me from across the table in the office the next morning. You sure you want to go this route? Quiet drop, no narrative. Yes, I said. Let them connect the dots themselves. We picked a short list of outlets. Not the tabloids, not the clickbait blogs, the ones that still cared about real reporting. 30 minutes later, it was done. And not an hour after that, I got the text from Nyla. It's spreading. Fast. Meanwhile, in some studio across town, Clarissa was midway through another interview when her phone buzzed. The host paused. Everything. All right? Clarissa blinked. Her lips parted. The producer leaned into her earpiece. You might want to log off, he whispered. She just published everything. The color drained from her face. Back in my office, a ping popped up. Subject line, Final Gala Program Revision. Message body, Ms. Vance, based on recent developments. And request from key partners, we've revised the schedule. Would you like to speak now? I didn't answer yet. I stared out the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the skyline turn gold. The next move wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be lasting. The only thing louder than truth is when silence ends with facts. The night air hummed above the rooftop, threaded with soft jazz, the clinking of wine glasses, and the subtle tension of people pretending to be impressed with each other. The final night of the Vance family gala was in full swing. Strings of gold lights zigzagged above tables topped with $300 centerpieces and donors who smiled too widely when speaking of legacy. I stood near the back railing, looking out at the orange flicker of the desert skyline. The last text from Nyla still glowed on my screen. They've revised the final program. Would you like to speak now? Before I could respond, the event MC stepped onto the stage and tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. As we close out this incredible weekend, celebrating vision, values, and family, we'd like to recognize one guest who has quietly redefined American innovation. That was the only warning? The screen behind him flickered, then bloomed to life. It started with a grainy home video clip. I was 6, holding a wrench almost too heavy for my hand, helping my grandfather build a soapbox car in the garage. Then came stills. Old photos of me sketching next to Mom's spice rack. Napkins littered with designs. My teenage desk with concept notes pinned over math homework. The audience murmured. Then came the sketches, clean, futuristic lines, not just of a car, but a movement, a philosophy. Velocity with grace. The core ethos of Aura. Finally, the last image. Me, months ago, handing over the keys of the first production Aura to a young woman in a wheelchair. The screen faded to white. Then 3 words appeared, bold and quiet. Alina Vance, founder and CEO, Aura Motors. For a few moments, the rooftop was silent. Then a gasp. I thought she was Clarissa's assistant, someone muttered. Near the bar. Across the crowd, a champagne flute shattered against concrete. Clarissa had dropped hers. Her expression twisted for half a second before she smoothed it into a strained smile. Julian tried to move toward the stage, but one of the PR managers from Aura gently stepped in his way with a clipboard. Serafina sat motionless, lips parted, eyes still fixed on the screen. I didn't wait for anyone to summon me. I walked forward, heels sharp against the stone, and stepped onto the stage. No applause, just eyes. I took the mic. I didn't smile. I didn't do this to prove anything, I said evenly. I did it because I could, because I had to. The wind tugged at the hem of my jacket. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the same red scarf they had once called thrift store material, the one I wore that day I showed up in the so-called broken-down car. I draped it over the podium, smoothing its edges like you would something sacred. You called it scrap, said it didn't belong at your table. But I kept it because it reminded me what it felt like to be underestimated. I glanced out at the crowd. This whole brand was built with the kind of silence you turned into a weapon. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't mean absence. It means momentum. I stepped away from the podium. They didn't know if they should clap, so I left them with the tension. As I walked down the stairs, Serafina moved from her seat and intercepted me near the planter wall. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, almost a whisper. We would have supported you. I looked at her. Really looked. You never asked, I said. You only assumed. I kept walking. Clarissa stood in my path. She opened her mouth, but I didn't. Stop. Not to hear her. Not anymore. I passed her like a breeze passes through glass, clean and indifferent. The valet handed me my clutch. I wasn't headed out just yet. I needed a moment of fresh air. I made my way down the staircase to the lower courtyard, less crowded now. Its fairy lights softer, gentler somehow. That's when I heard the small voice. "Are you the car woman?" I turned. A girl, no older than 7, stood by the bench, the same one I'd sat on earlier that weekend. Her hair was braided in 2 rows and she held a notepad in her hands, pages, full of what looked like designs of her own. I knelt. "No," I said with a smile that finally felt mine. "I'm the woman who decided to stop asking permission." She grinned, nodding like she understood more than most adults ever did. 6 months later, the world remembered my name, but I still remembered the silence. The factory was humming by the time I arrived. Morning light streamed through the panoramic windows at Aura HQ, warming the concrete floors and glass walls that framed every corner of the innovation floor. Engineers moved like clockwork, adjusting chassis prototypes and running quiet tests along the interior track. On the wall near reception, framed photographs of our earliest concepts lined the hallway, each one a snapshot of the girl they once dismissed. My office overlooked it all. I stood behind my desk, sipping my tea, watching this machine of purpose we'd built. It was strange how calm could feel so earned. My fingers brushed over the corner of a plaque just installed beside the office door. It read, "Headquarters founded by Alina Vance." It wasn't about the sign. It was about everything they said I didn't do and everything I chose to do anyway. The fallout came fast and loud. Clarissa posted a public apology on her social channels, talking about sisterhood and miscommunication. Of course, it only came after her skincare line lost 2 major celebrity endorsements. People started asking questions about who really did what, and the glossy version of her brand cracked at the edges. Julian didn't say much. The IRS had more to say about his charity write-offs than I ever could. Serafina vanished from society columns. She declined every gala, every brunch, every committee invitation after the Aura reveal. Rumors swirled about anxiety, retirement, and family matters. But I didn't confirm or deny anything. I had no desire to feed a machine I'd outgrown. As for me, I didn't post. I didn't tweet. I didn't grant interviews. I let the work speak. And it did. Loudly. The black matte business card, the one that started the storm, it now sat in a custom frame in the Aura lobby, beneath a spotlight, with one small line etched beneath it. The quietest person in the room isn't always the weakest. One Friday afternoon, while walking through the showroom to check on the Model A1 delivery, I heard a small familiar voice echo near the test drive entrance. "Auntie Alina!" Maya, now 8, ran toward me in a red jacket and sneakers that lit up every time she jumped. She hugged me fast, then stepped back, holding up a notepad covered in hand-drawn logos. "Can I be on the wall one day, too?" I crouched beside her, brushing a piece of hair from her cheek. "You can build your own wall, sweetheart, and you'll know exactly how to fill it." We walked toward an Aura prototype side by side. Her eyes sparkled as she climbed into the passenger seat. Before buckling in, she reached into her backpack and tied something around her neck. The red scarf, the same one I had worn at the first dinner, the one they mocked. She wore it like armor. She didn't even know the history. She just said, "It looks like something a builder would wear." That drive around the inner track, I'll remember it longer than my IPO. A few weeks later, on a Tuesday that started like any other, the unexpected happened. Serafina showed up. No press, no driver, just her. Standing in the lobby, wearing jeans, her hair tied back, face bare of makeup. I nearly didn't recognize her. She was holding something. When we stepped into my office, she handed me a brown, leather-bound cookbook. The spine was worn, the corners curled. It was our family recipe book, one I hadn't seen since before high school. "I thought you might want this," she said softly. "You were always the one who remembered the recipes. You memorized the way Dad folded dough." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I remembered everything. She nodded once. That was it. No apology, no long explanation. Just the beginning of something that didn't need to be named. She left. I didn't stop her. But this time, her silence didn't feel like punishment. That night, I returned to my desk alone. In the second drawer, tucked behind early shareholder files, was the original post-it I'd once taped to my bedroom mirror, the one from my first mentor, Alara. I unfolded it slowly. Your eyes see things the world isn't ready for yet. Build anyway. I held it for a long while. Then I pulled a fresh sticky note from the pad beside me and wrote something new. Don't wait to be told you belong. The next morning, I pinned both to the break room wall in the factory, right above the coffee machine where all the junior designers like to congregate. I didn't sign either. They'd know. As I stepped back and looked at them side by side, it felt like closure, or maybe ignition. People used to say, legacy is about what you leave behind. But I realized mine was about what I refused to let go of. They laughed at what they didn't know. They built legacies out of noise. I built mine out of silence and steel. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't a comeback. It's becoming the story they'll never forget. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt underestimated, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to follow more of this journey, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel